Hello? Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you, Paul.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Are we ready, Deb?
Oh, yes, all set. Yep.
Oh, yes, all right, thank you. All right, so let's call the order Town of Ladder Inland Wetland Watercourse Commission regular meeting of October 6, 2020, time 7:02. Secretary, can please do roll call.
Justin DeBro,
Present.
Paul Maugle,
Present.
Dan Peeler,
Present.
Lynn Marie Thompson,
Present.
Beth Reeby,
Present.
Glenn Grebner,
Present.
Corey Watford.
He declined, so we'll call that excused.
Okay. Tony Capon,
I'm here, so I'm present.
John Pisano,
Absent.
absent. Yeah.
All right. So this time, I don't have any visibility on who's on the call. If you have anybody from the public that would like to make any comments, we ask you to identify yourself, your place of address, and you have, grant you about 3 minutes to provide public comments. Do we have anybody from the public who'd like to comment? Is there anybody like unknown numbers on the call, Deb?
I see a couple numbers on the call, yes, but I don't know who they are.
Okay.
I don't.
All right, I'm not hearing anything from them, so we'll say no public comments tonight.
Okay.
Let's move on to our old business, which is a continued discussion of the fee schedule that we've saw that Chris Burdick sent out a copy of the fee schedule, all typed up as was requested from our last meeting. We all had the opportunity to review it and verify it against our notes for the meeting minutes last month.
So, Jake, as we look at the fee schedule, I'm looking at page 8 of 15. That says they were recommended on 9-1-20. Is that the one that we're talking about?
That is the one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I believe it says clean draft or 9/21/20 at the top.
Yeah, it says 9/01/20.
Okay. I have another one that says 9/29, but it is exactly this.
Okay. So are we going to go down them like item by item?
Would you like us to?
Probably it might be easiest because there's one or two I'd like to talk about, but I don't want to override somebody who has something else to mind.
All right, so we'll discuss it. We'll go through it line item by line item. Anybody has any comments on the lines, speak up when we get to that. So start reading from the list. We have upland review area permits and applications reviewed by the duly authorized agent for residential accessory structures or additions or expansions to existing structures on residential lots up to 1,000 square feet, including but not limited to sheds, additions, swimming pools, and decks. We are asking a fee of $35.
Right. So whatever is on the screen is not what we're working on.
Right.
That's an earlier version.
Is it this one?
It goes down. Yeah, that's looking better.
Okay, that's the
Yes,
one.
that's the one.
Yeah, Deb, it's the one with the memo attached to it.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, I had that up first. Okay, this is it.
Okay, so
Does anybody have any? Sorry.
fine with that.
All right. Everybody else?
It's a functional fee with regards to that. At least from what I saw with the other ones, it's on the low end. So
No issues.
no significant issues.
All right, so moving on, we have residential structures and additions or expansions to existing structures greater than 1,000 square feet on residential lots, including new single and two-family residences for a fee of $75.
I'm good.
Is there what's the specific reason that it's significant, that it's almost twice as, well, it's more than twice as much as the cost of the accessory structure one?
So it includes a lot more review from our paid staff at Town Hall,
Okay, that makes sense.
the larger applications.
Okay.
All right.
It
so
makes sense
move
in
on.
context.
All right, so moving on, so we have our permits and applications that are reviewed by the commission. Pre-application review, which is conducted by our enforcement officer or planning department at Town Hall. For pre-application review, we have no fee for that. And for permitted uses as of right and non-regulated uses, as determined by the commission, we charge no fee. Is there any comments on those two? All right, we have residential uses, including but not limited to new single and two-family dwellings, accessory structures, and/or additions or expansions to existing structures on residential lots, swimming pools, or grading activities for a fee of $150.
So this is Lynn Marie, and I had a concern about that. What I was thinking we said, and who knows if I remember correctly or not, but that we would have one fee for residential structures, including new and two-family dwellings, but we would have a reduced fee for accessory structures. And I would actually like to delineate what those are, you know, small sheds, additions, expansions up to 1,000 square feet, pools, and grading. Because we talked about if people are already property owners and taxpayers, we would like to keep them from having to pay the $150 fee.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
We paid $150 based on the cost of the town to submit the advertisement in the newspaper.
Oh, so it costs $150 to publish regardless.
Yeah, that was before the last one.
Oh,
Okay.
that's just plain annoying.
It's one of our requirements.
So it's been pushed down as low as we can get it. Okay.
Right, without costing the town money.
Okay. I can move along with that since that's the case.
Is there, I admit that I'm pulling a blank on any specific thing. Is there any specific reason why we publish in the day?
General statute from the state.
I'm aware of that much. I'm just saying, is it possible that a different newspaper might be cheaper?
No, it tells us to use the paper with widest distribution in our area. So for us, it's New London Day.
Ah, that's annoying.
Hmm.
They're going to have to do something about that when the papers all go bankrupt.
Yeah, well, until that changes, though, we're stuck with it.
Okay. That's annoying.
All right, can we move on to our next line?
Yep.
Sure.
All right, so next line, we have multifamily, commercial, industrial, and mixed uses will be $200 fee. All right, no comments?
That's really only $50 on top of the one for residential, so.
So next line is residential and commercial subdivision reviews without regulated activities for a fee of $150.
And that's the newspaper thing again?
Yeah, anytime we have a permit that we approve, it gets published in the newspaper.
Yeah.
So my question would be, isn't this the typical thing that we review and we send a letter of no comment forward to planning and zoning, but we don't do any publication?
That, I don't think that's across the board, though. We'll get some that go over to planning and zoning. They have their own fee structure.
But if this is just the one that we review and we send forward either a letter of comment or a letter of no comment, and there's no regulated activities, I would think we wouldn't charge for that.
All right, Mr. Felice, if you're on the line here, could you provide any comment here? You've been in a lot more discussion than we have about this.
Yeah, I honestly don't recall recently if there is a legal posting in the newspaper. I would think there would be, though, and that's what that fee would be based off of.
But you do remember the letter that we sent forward of no comment, right?
Yeah, no, I do.
And those were
recall
never published.
But I think those were based on zoning applications that they wanted our input on. They weren't. Those were not wetlands applications. They were zoning applications.
So
Because
that
the wetland application, I think we're still required to publish the
they
notice.
were required. I'm sorry, Justin. They were required for wetlands review, but they weren't. There was no wetlands or upland review involved.
Right, and there, in addition, there also wasn't a wetland application. It was just a concurrence on the zoning one. So this is the case where
So-
it's a wetland application.
So say again what
It
you
might-
just
it might
said.
be in addition to the wetland application, it also have a zoning application, which required its own notice.
Do we need to clarify that? Whether, because if there's a publication fee, I do want them to pay it. If there's not, and it just is coming here because planning and zoning says I have to, and they only want a letter of no comment, I wouldn't want a fee. And I just am not clear.
So in those cases, when planning sends it over to us for, comment, no comment, those are not wetlands applications. So if the case, they come before us with an application, it's gonna have a required publication fee.
Okay, so can we,
The wetland is gonna require application for us, but then it might also require a zoning application, which has a separate fee that's handled by our zoning commission.
okay, so could we say residential commercial subdivision review without regulated activities, but requiring publication?
Anytime we have an application, it requires that. So these are all in reference to the heading on the line here for permit applications.
So this is only an application that has no regulated activity. So why do we have an application then?
Because of the permit, right?
It can't, you can't get a permit without an application. This is the IWWC read the note below. The IWC reviews and make recommendations to the planning and zoning regarding any subdivision that contains regulated wetlands or uplands, even if there are no regulated activities. So this is something that we might have an upland review, and the towns or whoever sends it to us to just make sure there is no problem. It was kind of like to make sure there's no problem. It's not, it may not be an application though. I think you might be right on that, Justin. It might not be an application.
Yeah, with no application, there's no fee.
Okay, so if there's no application, there's no fee. So then could we say residential and commercial subdivision application review without regulated activities?
Sounds like we would need the application in there someplace.
It does.
We can add that. It also says it in the heading for the list that we're reading. But if you all
Okay.
want, we can easily add that to application review.
Okay.
Because the heading says permitted applications reviewed by us. So it has to be an application or it doesn't fall under one of those subheadings there. So it's in the heading.
Yeah, but if it's not regulated, then it wouldn't be us.
And it wouldn't be a permit application either. So it would not be in this, it would not be in this section.
Right. Something's putting it in the
I think
section.
putting that in is redundant. We could do it, but it's redundant.
Excuse me, this is Mike Washington, Counselor Washington. Counselor Washington. Just last night, just so we understand, what was forwarded to the Land Use Committee was voted on yesterday. So if you make any kind of change to what was submitted, please make sure it's substantive because it'll have to go back to the land use.
Well, why would land use have voted on it if we haven't finalized it?
Because it got submitted to land use with the premise that there wasn't going to be any changes on it.
Uh-huh.
So it can get pulled back out again, but the problem is it got to land use, and it was believed that it had been vetted out multiple times, and when it got submitted, it was submitted with the understanding that this was going to be the final thing. So I'm not sure why it ever got submitted to land use if it wasn't if it hadn't been fully vetted yet.
Yeah,
Right, because Michael, I can actually remember last time asking that it come back to the commission one more time because I wanted to see what it looked like when it was finalized. So I know it wasn't finalized at our end.
So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, please here.
Sorry, Mr. Philippe?
So I believe Ms. Burdick believed that was going to be all set because we did go line by line at the last meeting and the commission agreed on the fees. This is in her memo that's attached to this attachment. So she forwarded to land use. As Mr. Washington stated, any changes are going to have to go back to that committee. So Ms. Burdick believed that the fees wouldn't be changed, like I said, because we went to them individually. And this was kind of a final once over, see what it looks like on paper.
But Kyle, if you look at the agenda, the agenda says continued discussion of IWWC fees, IWWC proposed fee draft, and IWWC fee schedule planner memo. So it was still in the proposal stage.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I apologize for Ms. Burdick can't be here tonight. But that's what she, spoke to me about today.
Okay.
Obviously, if we make any changes, it'll be doable. It's just gonna, take longer.
But we're not changing the fee, right? We're just adding.
We're clarifying.
Yeah.
that should be easy.
Yeah.
One thing that we may want to keep in mind is when we go to reconsider the commission bylaws. No, cat, stop. Sorry about that. We may want to include remember this and include something that would prohibit it from going forward until we have actually had a vote saying, yes, this is finalized.
So that's just good practice, Dan. I believe like submitting it was premature. I understand. We agreed on the fees. We wanted to see it one last time in writing. It was, not voted on. That it was finalized the last meeting. Like Ms. Thompson said, she wanted to see it in writing so we could go over it one last time, see it in writing as it would be submitted before it was forwarded on. So I believe that was premature. It happened. We're not going to walk back on that. If we make any significant changes here, like Mr. Washington said, it will have to be voted on by the land use committee. Then.
I'm saying going forward, we need to keep this whole thing in mind for when we redo the IWWC bylaws and include something prohibiting us from being able to advance it before we have had a vote saying, yes, this is finalized.
All right, agreed. But I'd like to keep this conversation targeted towards the fees before us right now.
Yeah. So where we are right now is just looking to see if we can clarify the piece on residential commercial subdivision applications review without regulated activities. And since you said that that's under permits and applications reviewed by our IWWC, we just need to remember that, because 2 months from now, we won't remember having made this decision.
I agree.
All right. So are we going to move on? Do we want to add that word application in there, or do we want to move on as written with the understanding that it's under the heading for application review?
I would like to see application, just because this is a little confusing, but that would be my vote. I would like to hear from other people.
Hey, I want to agree with you, just because if we're having confusion here, when this goes out to the town to read it, it's quite possible that there'll be an additional, confusion there. So if we can clarify with just the addition of that one word, I'm going to agree.
I agree with that.
I'd say that works for me.
I agree.
All right, so we're going to add the word. So the title of this will be residential/commercial subdivision application review without regulated activities.
Yes.
Okay. So to the next slide. Residential/commercial subdivision with regulated activities. We're going to start with a $250 base fee, and that will cover up to 3 lots in the application, with an additional $50 per lot charge in excess of those 3 lots.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue.
Good.
All right. Next line. We have significant impact activity, public hearing fee, $450.
Good.
Next line, we have a complex application fee with not any stated fees, but see below with an asterisk, which it says the complex application fee. The Inland Wetlands Agency may charge an additional fee sufficient to cover the cost of reviewing and acting on complex applications. Such fee may include, but not be limited to, the cost of retaining experts to analyze, review, and report on issues requiring such experts. The agency or the duly authorized agent shall estimate the complex application fee, which shall be paid pursuant to these regulations within 10 days of the applicant's receipt or notice of such estimate. Any portion of the complex application fee in excess of the actual cost shall be refunded to the applicant no later than 30 days after publication of the agency's decision.
This is great.
Okay. Next line is for renewal or modification of previously approved permit, $150.
Does that have to be published?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, then we're just covering our costs of publication.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. The last line is for the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Regulation or MAP amendment, $450.
Good.
That's to cover the GIS costs incurred by the town, right?
And additional publication fees.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
Okay. And then the memo continues with our existing application fees, which are already covered in our regulations. So is there any more comment or concern with what we have here for the application fee schedule? The only change I've noted from what was written is, as we discussed, for the residential commercial subdivision review, adding the word application between subdivision and review.
I'm fine
I
with
believe so.
the discussion. So Justin, I have one question. These application fees are an addendum in our bylaws, right?
Yes.
Are they going to continue to travel as that?
So it's something I've been bringing up the last couple months. I'm thinking, because it's not an addendum, but an appendix. It's Appendix A to our bylaws right here. So in order to fully adopt these, we'd have to change our regulation to delete the Appendix A fee schedule and then refer it to, I think what I saw for like the zoning was a town ordinance that covered the fees. Am I correct in that, Mr. Washington? All right, I think he stopped listening.
Justin, you need to tell me what you said again. I didn't quite
I
understand.
unmuted.
All right, so our existing fee schedule is an appendix within our regulation. So I believe we have to change our regulations to delete that appendix and then in turn refer it to another document, which would cover the fees, which would make changing the fees in the future should our costs continue to increase without having to change the regulations.
Correct.
To change the regulations to require public hearing.
So Justin, I remember going to one of the legal seminars, and the attorney who actually writes for Kakiewicz suggested that there be no application fees, whether they're an appendix or an additional form or anything as part of the bylaws, because people will want to change the application fees and not necessarily change their bylaws. So I think our long-term goal should be to remove the application fees from our bylaws. They just need to travel separately. But I don't know what you plan to do with these right now.
So I think what I was seeing and looking at all the correspondence I had, like for planning and zoning, they're updating their fees. I think it's actually listed on a town ordinance that town council is voting on. So that would be the fee schedule. And like to change our regulations, I would propose that we just delete the fee schedule from there and refer to the other document of where the fees are going to be. To see a list of current fees, ledger town
But
ordinance.
to do that, we have to go through a public hearing, right? Because we're changing our our bylaws, our regs,
Yeah.
bylaws. Rather.
We're changing our regulations.
Yeah.
Whether we
Okay.
remove the fee schedule or we modify the fee schedule.
Okay.
We're changing our regulations regardless.
Okay. So could this be done, since the other commissions are changing their fees, could this be done as one large activity to reduce costs?
I don't know the answer to that question. Mr. Washington, Mr. Felice, if you guys have any input on that, greatly appreciate it.
That would be a new one on me. I would think we could do it as a large group, but I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and see if the charter requires each commission to be done separately. I'm not sure on that one.
Okay, it's just something to keep in mind because it reduced a $450 fee.
Yeah, so I mean, we're gonna be at the decision tonight. Like, if we're gonna accept these, I mean, it's already been forwarded on. So, but we'll just make the motion to forward it on just the same, so that it's formalized. And then to change our regulations, we want to do that public hearing. Ideally, I think we can do it next month, give a 30-day notice so we can have it, prior to our regular meeting.
So
But
what are you looking for in terms of a motion?
Sorry?
So what are you looking for in terms of a motion?
Once we get there, it'll be to accept the application fees as presented to us here in the memo from September 29th, or it's listed clean draft 9/29/20, to be forwarded on to Town Council Land Use Committee.
Okay.
So that would be for one. And the second one would be so what comes out of that is how to change our regulations, how to rewrite our regulations to reference the way the fees are going to be presented to the town, whether it be town ordinance, memo, I'm uncertain. But we'd have to change our regulations to reflect that. And then once we have that decided, to rewrite the regulations with that in mind, give us the opportunity to look at those so that we can move on to public hearings to accept, prior to us voting to accept the new regulations. Does everybody follow that?
Kinda.
So maybe you better say what our motion should be.
Dave, I think you want a motion to approve the fees as amended. And then under new business, I think you want to talk about where you want to pull these out. So they're two different motions, two different places.
I
But just
see.
begins.
I agree, Tony.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Tony.
So let's
That
move
would make
forward.
sense to me.
Like Mr. Persona said, let's move forward. If anybody has a motion to accept the IWC application fees as amended, if we're ready, I'd like to hear that now.
Yes,
I move to approve the IWWC application fees as amended.
And I second that.
All right, so motion by Mr. Peeler, second by Mr. Maugle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, decision is unanimous, so we accept these fees as amended. And do we have a motion to forward these on to Town Council Land Use Committee?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, motion by Mr. Maugle, second by Mr. Peeler. All in favor to submit these application fees to Town Council Land Use Committee?
Aye.
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 That decision is unanimous. Okay. So that will close out our old business. Moving on to new business. Do you have any new receipts or any new applications to receive tonight, Mr. Police?
We have received no new applications, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. All right, and we have a motion to amend our agenda here to add to the new business discussion of changing our regulations with regards to application fees. I'd be looking for a motion to amend the agenda to add that.
I'm just trying to think of the proper wording for that.
I would recommend add to new business on our agenda, discussion of modifying IWWC regulations with regards to updated application fees.
I move to add discussion of new application fees to the meeting minutes under new business.
No.
Does that work? No.
You're going to amend the agenda
I move to amend the agenda
to include
to include discussion of IWWC application fees
as related to their inclusion in the regulations.
as related to their inclusion in IWWC regulations to the agenda under new minute or new business.
I'll second.
All right, I think I heard Ms. Thompson on that one first. So I got a motion by Mr. Peeler, second by Ms. Thompson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Decision is unanimous. All right. So, let's have a discussion about our regulations as they relate to these new application fees. How do we want to present our regulations to reference the application fees? The one question I would have for that, and that's to you, Mr. Washington, is how are these recorded in the town for viewing by the public so that we can provide the right verbiage?
Well, I'll be blunt. I'm probably not, usually I deflect most stuff to Roxanne on proper etiquette. I'll be blunt. But I'm trying to remember what we've gotten, what we have received in. I'm afraid to give you an answer that I'm not positive on. But what I can
Okay.
do is I can reach out to Roxanne in the morning to answer that question. I guess 'cause she would probably be the one to best answer that for me.
But we could say that we would like to remove the costs or fees from the regulations, and we could move that far and put them in a place in which they would be clearly available to the public.
Yeah, but if you have to get the fees approved regardless. So if you want to change the fees, and it's got to go through a public hearing.
So
I'm
the
trying to.
public-
Go
is the
ahead.
public hearing for changing the fees here? Is the public hearing
No.
for us is going to be for modifying the regulations?
Right.
So
Public say 2 years from now, if we want to update the fees because the newspaper ups their fees for us, it not going to require us to do another public hearing because our regulations will still reference a different document, which will be subject to its own change approvals.
Right. I agree with you, Justin. We
I
just
don't-
need to get them out of the bylaws or out of the regulations and into a better place.
I don't see why you can't have it as a standalone, as long as, like you're saying, your bylaws send you to a certain document.
Right. My question is, what is that document? I don't know what that document would be.
Mr. Chairman, Ralph Felice here.
Yeah.
I believe the other commissions are moving our fees to a town ordinance. The question is, I don't know if we can reference an ordinance in the regulation change prior to it being written. It's kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So I don't know if maybe that ordinance has to be done before we can do the regulation change. I'm not sure on that.
I think it would have to be if we're going to reference it specifically. Otherwise, there's no ordinance to reference.
Right. And I would like to know, if the fees are moved to town ordinance, what restrictions does that put on our commission in terms of making changes?
Good point.
I will look into
I
that.
think as a commission, we have all the rights we need to forward any recommendations for changes to town ordinances. Like, we can't vote on the change to the town ordinance, but we can provide a recommendation at any time.
Right. And the town can refuse to change the ordinance at any time. Whereas right now we have some independence in terms of how we want to deal with our application fees.
So how do we exercise that independence now?
Could we put it
It's
as a
all
separate
still related to
document?
the fees going to the town and going to the same general fund as was discussed last month.
I see a separate document on the website where you have under application, you have bylaws, fees, effective such and such a date, and you just go down the website. So they're posted on a website available to anybody.
A separate document. It's a good idea.
Right.
And just isolate the two, and that way they're not conjoined, and you'll have a better result, I think.
So just if you're talking about just like a Word document that's posted on the website,
Or a PDF, whatever. Yeah.
so I don't know if that is official enough.
Well, we didn't have to get our fees approved last time by anybody that I remember.
Well, we did that through public hearing as all our fees came into the
You're right, right. As part of our regulations.
Just as a kind of side note, as I'm looking here at the, it was said earlier by somebody that a lot of the fees are coming in through an ordinance. So
I'm not happy.
We forwarded these to you, Mr. Washington, as part of the land use committee. What do you guys do with them from there?
Well, for example, we have the building fees that came in. That was done as an ordinance. Let's see, P&Z fees were done as an ordinance. So I'm thinking everything's been coming, and even these were being done as an ordinance, 300-XXX, and they're going to turn into an ordinance when they get approved.
Well, could we reference that ordinance then, and tie it to the document we're going to post? And that way, when it does come to that point, we could bring it into the the ordinance? And that way be a cohesive part of it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. This is that's above my pay grade on, as far as knowledge goes. I can look into it to find out, but that's
Mike,
I
what's
believe-
the
sorry.
timeline on the ordinance? How long before that actually goes into effect, is approved and goes into effect?
what happens. It comes out of land use, goes to the town council. The town council, for example, if the town council meeting is next week, is next Wednesday. So the only thing I could do at the town council meeting, I can make a motion not to take the inland wetland ordinance and send it back to land use. So we'd send your stuff, your fee schedule would all get sent back to land use. And then that would give you the ability to land use to fix what just got done today, and then determine how best to separate out the fee schedule so that your bylaws and everything stays one place, and then your fee structure someplace else. Now, I'm not sure if that's possible, because if it was, I would think we wouldn't be putting these fees in the ordinances unless it was this was the only way we could do it. So these ordinances are just fees. So when you look at the P&Z fee schedule, it's its own separate ordinance. So it doesn't impact the bylaws or anything else. It's just its own ordinance.
So is there an existing ordinance right now that's just being updated for P&Z?
I think these are I'm betting these should all be new ordinances, because we just got done doing them recently.
Okay, so like if I could go back, I can go into P&Z regulations and see how they reference their fees, and like we could model ours after that.
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that right now if you'd like.
I would. Thank you.
So the final section of our zoning regulations is fees, and it basically references the town ordinance. So in that case, we can change the fees in the future, but we don't necessarily have to change the regulation. I think that's the goal for all these commissions,
Correct.
is to have the fees in ordinance.
Okay. That sounds like what I was imagining.
Yeah, as long as it's not really my first choice, but it certainly is consistent, and it would be clear to people where things are.
Agreed.
I agree with that.
So my question, Justin, is then, is this something that we need to do tonight to make this decision, or is this something we sit on for a month until Michael's able to get the answers out to our questions?
The second part, do we have answers to our questions? So what I'm thinking is, have those answers, and I can draft up, a modification to Section 19 of our regulations to reference the fees to present to the commission next month. And then once we have a continued discussion with that, move on to looking for a public hearing to accept those changes or change them again, depending on the discussion.
So this is Councilor Washington, just so I understand the actual question. So the actual question is, can the fees be done separate from an ordinance and the bylaws?
No.
Just as an ordinance.
The question is, can we delay making the decision about what to do with the fees? We know for a month until you find out, can they travel in their own ordinance, and can you make the changes to the fees that you were talking about? And then that would give us a month period of time to get the other stuff in order.
The right now, it's traveling in an ordinance, and it doesn't even have an ordinance number to it, so it can just be left and tabled. So it doesn't have to move forward.
That's what I'm wondering. Does a table let us clarify things and have you get a path, find a recommended path for us?
I think the best thing to do would be, because it's going to come in front of the town council on Wednesday of next week, is I'll get a hold of Counselor Davis, and I'll get a hold of Counselor Dabrowski, and let them know that the preference from now, I don't want to speak for the commission. The preference is for the commission to have it sent back to the land use, because instead of going through the full process with the town council, so it won't get voted on, it'll go back to land use, which would allow land use to send it back to you guys to do whatever well, it wouldn't have well, if it goes back to land use, then at that point, we'll know how best it'll buy you time to do your fee structure, because then we can park it in land use. Because you're gonna forward us your fee schedule with new verbiage, I assume, this week, next week, before our next meeting. So at that point, we'll have your verbiage, and then the question becomes, you'll have time, because as long as it doesn't go in front of the town council for a vote, it goes back to, I can send it back to land use.
Okay.
Because we need your land use, your revote on it with the new verbiage. Is that correct? Before
Correct.
You present it to the town council?
Correct.
Okay. So, then when's your next land use meeting?
We only meet once a month, so we'll meet before your next meeting, but we can push it off. So I'll talk to Kevin about at the next meeting.
What would we be pushing it off for? I don't understand that.
Well,
because we're forwarding it to you as we talked about tonight.
Yep.
To land use. So once you guys approve what we're forwarding you, the new document that we're forwarding you, that's when it's okay to move toward town council.
Okay, but if there's something else, if there's something else you guys decide you want to do between now, so the document you forward to me, I can make sure that gets moved with the land use at the next meeting, beginning of next month. Okay, but if you decide, hold on, if you decide between now and our land use meeting that there's something else you want to do that impacts that, someone's gonna have to say something so that we don't vote on this again, that land use meeting, and have to do this again. So the document you sent, I assume that's the final version of what you want.
Yeah.
So we have a final version of our fee structure. What we don't yet have a final version of is where that's going to reside.
Well, right now it would reside as an ordinance. It's
Okay,
ordinance
so that's
300-XXX right now.
okay. And so, okay, so then if there's no choice, it goes to an ordinance and we don't have anything to say about it, then the path is really clear. We change our regulations and we send that document to you tonight and say, make this a new ordinance.
Correct. Now, I'm going to ask, because I don't know the answer to this part, is there anything besides an ordinance? I think there isn't, because everybody's walking through the same dance. And I think if we didn't have to put in an ordinance, then everybody would do as a separate document, a more or less formal document, I guess, on some aspect, because any change to the ordinance will require us coming right back through town council. So if you change your fees, you change the ordinance, and it comes back through town council, back through land use, the whole process. But here's the kicker. You got to remember, when it comes back through land use, say for example, 2 years from now, they triple the cost for newspaper advertisement, or forget, and everything else in there is the same. Then it's just rubber stamp through the process. Because one of the things about things that come out of the land use or whatever body that's we're talking of, when it gets to town council, it's usually a yes vote because it's already been fully vetted. So if the issue becomes down the road that this has been approved next month through land use, then 2 years down the road, someone says we got to change it to $300 because of the cost to get newspaper advertisement, then you just resend it with new numbers. Don't change any of the verbiage, and it just gets rubber stamped through the process.
In that world, Michael, I really love that. But think about when we tried to get an ordinance so that we could find people who weren't applying or complying with what we wanted them to do. That took over a year and a half.
Well, that's different though,
Yeah,
because the verbiage didn't exist.
right.
This verbiage exists. Only thing you're modifying are numbers based on outside costs that you can't control. Now,
Okay.
if you said you wanted to bring a new ordinance in that was a virgin ordinance with new language, then that's got to get vetted through land use, and that won't be a situation where it can just go through the system quickly, because it can move. The only reason something can move quickly is if the numbers or whatever and it's really going to be a number issue. A dollar change, something like that changed. But if you're trying to change verbiage, full-scale verbiage and rewrites, then that's a lot longer effort.
Okay.
I hope I'm as clear as mud on this.
I think you are.
So the expectation for me then is what you guys are going to send to land use. I'll get a hold of Kevin at the meeting that's coming up. You should expect me then to make a motion to send it back to land use. That way it doesn't get voted on at the town council, and land use can vote on what you're sending in next month to close this loop, and then it'll come back to town council.
Okay. So do you need a motion to that effect,
Well,
Justin?
I think we already made that motion. We're already forwarding them what the fee schedule. Like, we made that motion and it passed. We did that
Right.
previously in this meeting. So that's going
Correct.
to land use. Like what was submitted to you before was never a passed motion from one of our meetings.
Okay. Okay.
But
And that's going to be
that was prematurely sent to you because we didn't approve it.
correct.
Now what we're sending you is an approved document
Okay.
Yep. Because
Okay.
for you to vote on in land use, which will in turn forward that to town council. So what you have prior was submitted to you. I would not like that submitted to town council because that is not what we approved.
correct.
Okay.
So, and then once, as I see this, in the next few months, like, you'll get this, you'll approve it through land use, you'll present to town council's ordinance, so it gets approved as ordinance, we have an ordinance number to list the fee schedule that I can reference in our regulations. And once we have all that final verbiage, like, I can bring a proposed verbiage to our meeting next month for the fee section 19 of our regulations. And if I don't have the ordinance number, I'll just leave that blank. Once we have the ordinance number, then we have a finalized version of our regulations to present to a public hearing.
The only glitch in this is going to be, I'm going to have to ask Roxanne if there's a change. If we have an ordinance, if you do your bylaws and you reference the ordinance as a, say, 300-00010, just as an example,
Mhm.
and then you go to modify your fee structure just on the number side. So, for example, instead of it being $150, it's $200 for some particular unit.
No,
Does
I don't want to use the fee structure. I want to eliminate the fee structure from the regulations and just reference that ordinance. So there's only one document talking
No,
about
but hold
fees.
on, let me finish. When but it's going to be the ordinance, because I don't think, that's what I got to double check on. I don't think it can exist besides in an ordinance. And if it has to exist in an ordinance and you reference the fee structure to the ordinance, and then an ordinance modification results in a change in the ordinance number from a 310 to a 310A, then
That would be a problem.
that's a problem.
Yes. But if it stays 300, ordinance number 310 from year to year to year, no matter what dollar changes are in it, that would be okay.
Yes.
Do we have to reference the specific town ordinance number? We can just reference applicable town ordinance.
Yeah, I agree, Justin. I think that'd be the simpler way to
Leave
go.
that more open-ended.
I will find out if you can just use applicable town ordinance for the fee
Yeah,
structure.
I'm going to take a look at the zoning regulations. I want to see how theirs is written too, if it's already structured that way.
It's structured with an ordinance number. So I'm not sure if their bylaws, if they reference the ordinance number, if they just references applicable town ordinance.
Yeah, that's something I'll take a look at too.
But we can't do anything until the ordinance is drawn up and approved.
No, the purpose of this is just the discussion to help guide how we're going to move forward.
Good, okay.
But for myself, what I want to do is think like our next meeting is a proposed verbiage for our regulations, just to help further the discussion, so that once everything's finalized as far as the fees and the ordinance, we'll know how we want to already have it verbalized.
Since I'm one of the new people, just so I understand, we're going to take our fee structure and we're going to park them in land use for a month. That month is going to give us an opportunity, first of all, to get the ordinance that we need. So when we do our modification of our regulations and our public hearing, we will know what the ordinance is that we'll refer to, and we'll take the fee structure out of our regulations. Do I have that fairly correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so kind of close this discussion out for tonight and table it, unless anybody wants to step in, table it to continue next month's meeting. What I intend to do, and I'll work through Mr. Felice, Ms. Dobson, I'm going to create a proposed verbiage that we can use to guide our discussion next month, and then seeing where the fee structure that we just submitted up to the land use committee is in the process. They've gone through it if it's been the town council, if they have an ordinance number. And once we have all that finalized and close out our discussion, we'll be able to make a motion to go to a public hearing on some regulations that we all agree on. So unless anybody has anything else, I think that kind of ends out the discussion of that tonight. We're going to table that to continue the discussion at our next regular meeting. Now, do I have any further discussion on this right now? All right, I'm hearing none. So we're going to move on to our next item, which is the Wetlands Official Report. Mr. Felice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This past month, I approved 2 upland review area permits. The first one is 20-12 URA, 131 Spicer Hill Road. That was for a small 114 square foot addition with a 30 square foot deck addition onto an existing deck. That was approved on 9/28/20. It's a very minor disturbance. And the only stipulation really was that they would have a silt fence at the edge of any disturbed areas until it's fully vegetated. Any questions on that application?
Nope.
Hearing none. Okay. Excuse me. The next permit was 20-13 URA. It's 10 Flintlock Road. And that is actually Stonegate Village, for those of you that are familiar with that area. This was for the construction of a paved RV parking area. And this was on the original site plan approval. I believe the date was 2002. It's something that was never done when the homes were installed for whatever reason. But now we're going to have them install that. So this is basically that permit covering that. Again, the area was already cleared, so it's not wooded back when they did the original construction. So they're basically going to be paving an area. Again, there'll be a silt fence in any disturbed areas until it's vegetated. And that was approved on 9/30. Any questions on that application? Hearing none. And then I had one new complaint this month. It was on Homestead Road. It's not a specific address. The southern end, it's a turnaround, and there's a wooded area. A neighbor was concerned that other neighbors were blowing some of their leaves and yard debris into the wooded area. It did appear to be a wetlands area. It's not shown on our official wetlands map. However, there was an older subdivision that referenced it as wetlands. There wasn't any data saying when it was flagged, but based off that, I sent a generic letter to the neighbors in that area. I also referenced I worked with the Director of Public Works, and we referenced the town ordinance that speaks to blowing leaves in the town right away. I have not heard any further complaints on that still occurring, so I believe that addressed that. I plan to go out there again soon with, lawn maintenance going on in that area and just make sure that nothing is going on there. And that is all I have.
All right, thank you. Moving on, we have correspondence. Do we have any correspondence for this last month?
I think I posted a couple things on the website.
All right, so there's one scan document. I don't recall what the title was for that, and then you sent out the invitation for the legal seminar also, I believe. That's all I recall.
Right.
Okay. Moving on to announcements. Do I have any announcements? I am hearing none. Move on to minutes approvals, the regular meeting minutes of September 1st, 2020. Have we all had an opportunity to review those meeting minutes?
Yes.
Are there, you see any needed changes? Is it wrapped up? All right, I'm hearing none. I'd be looking for a motion to approve our regular meeting minutes of September 1st, 2020.
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes of our, September the 1st, 2020.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Ms. Thompson, second by Mr. Maugle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, all are in favor. Motion passes to approve regular meeting minutes of September 1st, 2020. All right, moving on to our meeting review.
I would like it noted that my official position is that I abstain from that particular vote due to not having been involved in that meeting.
All right, I'll note that Mr. Pealer abstained his vote. All else were in favor. All right. Do our meeting review. One exception of being myself, I think we actually did pretty good with the background noise this week.
Yes.
Having some technical trouble there. I found that out before we actually started the meeting, but I apologize for that terrible, terrible noise. So we did have the official report prior to the meeting. We had meeting minutes to be approved. So, our meeting review is, we're doing okay. The format's still working for everybody? Doing all right? I think this is the most participation we've had since we shifted to this format, so that's a good sign.
Yep.
My apologies for not showing up at the previous meetings in this format.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Do understand that everybody has other things going on in their lives too, but I would appreciate, we do send out the notice. Everyone replies to Ms. Dobson as we approach the first Tuesday of the month, so that we know if you're going to be here or not, to make sure that we have the form. It hasn't been an issue so far because enough of us have said we're going to come, but just for all of our members here, please remind yourselves if you could look for that email if you're not often on email, and then reply to Mr. Dobson.
Okay.
I shall strive to do better.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. So if there's nothing else, we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Motion by Mr. Pealer. Second.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Rebe. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All in favor. Meeting adjourned, time 8:05. Thank you. Everyone have a good night.
Michael?
Well.
So everybody,
Good night.